In today's world, due to technological and economical integration, the world is more connected than it has ever been. This process, known as globalization, has led to many similarities. The United States has always been known as the melting pot of cultures. However, the most prevalent is the Hispanic culture. This is a result of land acquisition from the Mexican-American War and the Spanish-American War, and immigration from many Latin American countries. For example, from the Mexican-American War, the United States gained half of its territory. And we can see this in the following examples. The state of Montana is simply the Spanish word montaña without the tilde. Another example is the state of Colorado. Colorado is a Spanish word that means to blush. In Spanish, they say ponerse colorado, to say to blush. Another example is the state of Arizona. Arizona stands for zona árida, which simply means dry zone. Also, from the Spanish-American War, the United States acquired the territory of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a Spanish-speaking country within the United States, and there are also many immigrants from Puerto Rico living in the U.S. who speak Spanish, as well as many immigrants from other countries such as Mexico and the Dominican Republic. In fact, there are more Dominicans living in New York than there are in Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. And as a result, the Spanish language is more prevalent than any other foreign language in the United States. At first, when we see a Spanish word, we may become flustered because we don't know what it means. However, many of these words are cognates, which means that they are derived from the same root and are very similar. The definition of cognates is now on the board, words that are derived from the same root. We can think of these words as the Spanish words being high up on a shelf and out of our reach. However, we can use our prior knowledge of English and some helpful tricks to help us understand what these words mean in Spanish. And now we're going to learn some of those common tricks that will help us to learn how to interpret Spanish words. As a disclaimer, we'd like to point out that some cognates can be false, whereas they may seem like they mean the same thing, but they actually do not. However, 90% of all cognates are actually true. The first group of cognates that we're going to deal with are those that have spelling or pronunciation variations. For example, we have the word auto, as in an automobile, in English, but in Spanish it's pronounced, the AU is pronounced more like OW. In Spanish, the word sounds more like auto. We also have the word chocolate in English, but in Spanish, we emphasize the last part of it, so the word becomes chocolate. The pronunciation is more phonetic because in English we don't pronounce the final E, but in Spanish we pronounce it. The next one is the word idea. In English we stressed the end, EA, of idea, but in Spanish we stress the letter I, so it becomes idea. We also have the word regular in English. In English, the U is stressed, regular. However, in Spanish, it is pronounced regular, and we stress the AR at the end. Another example that has a spelling variation is the word teléfono. When we pronounce it teléfono, instead of having a PH as it does in English, it is more phonetic and is spelt with an F. Similar to words with the suffix al, words with the suffix or will usually stay the same. For example, the English word actor is simply actor in Spanish. Also, the word doctor in English is doctor in Spanish, and the word error in English is error in Spanish. Now that we have finished examining all the different rules that there are for cognates, we have enough tricks that we can start to figure out what some of the Spanish words in the poem Bilingua Sestina by Julia Alvarez actually mean. One of the first examples of a Spanish word that is a cognate can be found in stanza 4, verse 23. Rosario, muse of el patio, sing in me and through me say. The Spanish word is patio, which is the same as the English word patio. It is one of the examples of a Spanish word that is the same in English. Another example of cognates within the poem is in verse 33. Awash with colores, luz, sueños, as if the nombres. Here we have the example of colores. Colores is the plural form of the word color, which is the same in English and Spanish. It means color. Another cognate is the word luz. Luz, L-U-Z, is derived from the Latin root L-U-C, which means light. In fact, when luz is plural, it becomes luces. And within luces, we can see the Latin root L-U-C. We can also find examples of this in our English vocabulary if we look at the words translucent, for example, which is spelt T-R-A-N-S-L-U-C-N-T. And within the word translucent, we can see the root L-U-C. So by using what we know, translucent, and knowing that L-U-C is the root for light, we can figure out what the word luz means. Another example is nombres. In nombres, the Latin root nom means name. Nombres is simply the Spanish word for names. Another example can be found in stanza 2, verse 11. Turn sol, tierra, cielo, luna to vocabulary words. Luna has the Latin root L-U-N, which means moon. In the English language, we can find the word lunar, such as the lunar calendar, which is based on the moon. By using this English word lunar, we can figure out that luna in Spanish means moon. Our final example can be found within the last verse of the poem. Blood beating, beating inside what I say in Inglés. This cognate is difficult because the Spanish word Inglés does not follow any of the tricks, nor does it have a specific Latin derivative. However, INGL is very similar to the Latin root ANGL, which stands for English. And by using this, we can determine that Inglés stands for English. Although it may not always be easy, we can use all of these tricks and our common English knowledge in order to climb the ladder and find out what words mean in Spanish.